Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the DCU Experience. My name is Garrick. We've got a member missing this week, but that's all right. With me, I've got True, and of course, I've got Christ. Since you've been gone, I can't breathe for the first time. Okay, we are here in the DCU Experience, and we've got a lot to talk about today. Crisis has gone on somewhat of a journey of self-discovery this week. We've been in some deep valleys. We climbed to the top of the mountain, and quite frankly, I'm not sure where we're at right now, but I'm excited to find out with all of you. As we all know, one of Crisis's favorite characters is Dick Grayson, aka the OG Robin, aka Nightwing, aka the best mullet in DC Comics circa 1986. Okay? We all know these to be facts. So we're going to let him take it for a minute as we start off. But before we get into that, how are you guys doing? How's your week been? What have you been getting into?
I got back into Oblivion. There's some Doom Eternal. I finally caved in and got Game Pass. It seems like it's worth it. $10 for whatever it was. Pretty hyped. It's been a kind of a roller coaster for a week. I didn't know about the news. I woke up, I looked on my phone, and there's just a huge chat with Crisis and Garrick. I was like, oh, just reading through the emotional turmoil throughout the night. It was an exciting read in the morning, but I'm here to see what Crisis has found out.
Well, I mean, what's been happening is what Garrick said. I've just been burning the candle at both ends, trying to get to the bottom of this. But to get into it, essentially, I think it was yesterday or the day before that, there was a tweet, basically not even quote tweeting, but just sort of attributing to Daniel RPK, who is a pretty infamous leaker of various media of Marvel. I think maybe Star Wars to some extent, and now at the DCU, sort of on the roll. There are obviously going to be people trying to get insight, trying to get scoops, and the news is basically that Daniel RPK, this leaker with alleged inside sources, is expecting Damian Wayne to be the Robin in the Teen Titans movie. For some added backstory, because we've basically talked about all of the peripheral subjects. We've talked about the fact that a Teen Titans movie is happening. That was officially acknowledged by James Gunn and Peter Safran. We talked about our feelings. We talked about, like a couple of episodes ago, me and Garrick talked about our ideal Titans lineup, and we talk about this potentiality as well. We covered how we would, what would the varying degrees of a Damian-led Titans movie, what would that look like? How would we prefer it? And to not get so marred in the personal feelings, because that kind of was covered the last couple of podcasts. But as far as the news is concerned, so looking at the timeline of announcements of sort of these projects, and we've talked about this before even early on. I think this topic is it's interesting because it's a bit of a culmination of a lot of our observations that we've made, where everything's riding on Superman. James Gunn is announcing things too quickly, and a lot of these details, like that fandom, the initial fandom where the lineup of movies got announced, more than half of them. So we're talking about Waller, we're talking about Booster Gold, we're talking about the Authority, and then even things that have been added onto that. We're talking about Sergeant Rock, we're talking about Clayface. All of these things, everything that's not in principal photography currently. So that includes Peacemaker Season 2, Green Lantern, Supergirl. All of those those productions are going well. However, everything else I just listed, based on what James Gunn has said, they're hitting snags, or the scripts aren't coming along. The Authority is an interesting case because that movie, he said, it was reported through like official sources like Variety, and there are quotes from Gunn himself none of this is hearsay. None of this are leaks. These are just what's been said officially about these productions. Is that the Authority, they weren't able to get the script right, and then also there are events in the Superman movie, which James Gunn wrote entirely, that contradict what their plans were for the Authority movie. So that all is to say, when you look at the Teen Titans script, there is an interesting anomaly where that one seems to be going super well. And what James Gunn has said about it, contrasting with, the Waller show, they're hitting snags. Booster Gold, the director, the showrunner left. Swamp Thing, the director is like taking a hold or something, or it's on hiatus. You look at those productions, and the writer of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, wrote that movie based on Tom King's comic, and then immediately following, she came to James Gunn with the Teen Titans script, which is interesting to point out. It's from her idea. It's her script. She then handed it over to James, and he said it was an awesome script that requires fiddling. The exact term, fiddling. He says, but it's definitely not a finished script, but it's an awesome script that requires fiddling. Fiddling is defined as just making minor adjustments. So as opposed to something like Authority, as opposed to Waller, these scripts are hitting snags. James Gunn is trying to get involved with them, but it seems like he's being spread too thin. It seems like Superman and Peacemaker, that's kind of taking his attention. Creature Commandos as well would have been added to the pile of work he had to do. But all of these other projects, except for Teen Titans, is struggling. And the reason why I think that's worth noting is because you look at the fandom and you look at the Brave and the Bold for initial release, the initial announcement. I think, given the context of a lot of those other projects, I don't even really believe at this point that Brave and the Bold, I don't think it's going to be called that. I don't think I don't know if he's going to be in the movie. All of these things we take for granted, I think, because it's Batman, it's so big. We know there's going to be a DCU Batman movie. That's just without a doubt. But a lot of these details, like Authority, it's not a priority. It's not, and the script that they had, they weren't able to get it working, and then even what they had, it was contradicting Superman. He announced that at the initial fandom. Booster Gold, I can go down the list. Waller hit snags. Like, it just, that fandom has aged very poorly. And when you take that into account, you look at the timeline of events. You look at Brave and the Bold. That's what James Gunn said would be the introduction of Damian. That movie, which is going to be, as far as we know, directed by Andy Muschietti, the director of The Flash, what he said about Brave and the Bold, essentially, if you sort of add everything together, because that movie is contingent on the Batman Part 2. The Batman Part 2 has its own sort of backdoor, troublesome development. We don't know exactly why. There's, reasons to speculate. But nonetheless, that movie was supposed to release like this year. And again, from an inside report, the first draft is going to be sent to James Gunn from Matt Reeves on Memorial Day, which is in like 5 or 6 days. So that movie, what Muschietti has said about Brave and the Bold is, he said, there's a plan in place to make sure these two movies don't crash into one another. And when you consider the development of the Batman 2, that movie is much farther along than Brave and the Bold in terms of production, which is saying a lot. And it also says a lot that Muschietti, in the same interview, was like, I might even be able to fit a whole nother movie into my, work schedule before pen hits paper on Brave and the Bold. So he wants to direct, and movies take a long time. Movies take 2 to 3 years if everything goes beautifully. Obviously, there's different factors if it's lower budget, but Muschietti directs pretty big studio movies. He directs It, he directed Flash. So that's 2 to 3 years, which coincides with the development window that it would take for the Batman Part 2. First draft, I don't think there's any big budget movie, especially something that's going to be under such scrutiny as the Batman Part 2, that is going to get the green light put into production, concept art, sets being built, costumes being built and designed. That's not going to happen based on the first draft. So it's going to undergo multiple revisions. Now, I think it's safe to say, just again, based on other estimates of how long these big blockbuster movies take to get actually released, I don't know if we're going to see the Batman Part 2 until like 2 to 3 years. And that's just how long it takes to shoot principal photography. That can take as long as like 9 months to a year. The multiple revisions of the script, pre-production, post-production, add all these things in, and then that's assuming it goes beautifully. Obviously, with the Batman, it's hard to get an exact estimate of the numbers there because COVID halted that production. So, it's hard to take into account, was the script maybe tweaked in that time when they didn't have anything else to work on. Obviously, that would have complicated the efforts in the pre-production process. But you look at all these things, you take all this into account, and the conclusion that I get when adding all this together, you look at how complicated a lot of these projects are to get off the ground. You look at the head of Warner Brothers saying it's all riding on Superman. And I think that's like the key point here. I think that's why a lot of these productions that James Gunn announced are so complicated. They're so hard to get off the ground. Directors are either leaving or they're postponing their efforts, or they're saying we can fit entire movies into this production, is because I think truthfully what's going on is Warner Brothers is not going to give the green light to allot funds to go full steam ahead with these productions unless Superman warrants a return. And I think within that, they're somewhat assured because they're going, okay, it's going to make this amount, so we can go ahead with Peacemaker, we can go ahead with Lanterns, we can go ahead with Supergirl. But to secure these like 10 or so projects, to secure funding for those, and even for James Gunn's attention, I mean, the guy's human. He can't work on, because he said, I'm trying to break authority with other writers within the DCU kind of consortium. I'm trying to break Waller, but it's giving us problems. And then there's also the fact that early on, when you connect the dots with the whole Matt Reeves side of things, he said that he came to James Gunn with the pitch for his Bat-verse, is the term he used. And we already know, based on inference, that could not have included the Batman Part 2. And again, with certain elements, Matt Reeves doesn't even know what the full story is. As far as we know, he's been turning in pages to Warner Brothers, not a full script, nothing like that. So he doesn't even know if maybe there will be a Dick Grayson Robin in that. Maybe there will be these certain villains. Brave and the Bold, because they don't want to, confuse audiences. The exact verbiage is they don't want to crash into each other. If you have two Batman movies in a similar enough window, they're going to galvanize each other's profit, right? It's just not a good idea to release them so close and share a lot of these same concepts. I don't think we're going to see Matt Reeves' version of Clayface and then Brave and the Bold feature Clayface as well. I don't think they're going to share villains or characters or dynamics like that outside of obviously superficially Batman, and maybe if they both have a different Robin, that'll be the strategy. But that's why this report, this leak, I just don't give it any credit. Daniel RPK also has a history, especially with the Marvel leaks that he's put out, quote-unquote leaks. He's gotten a lot of them wrong, and then a lot of them, too, it's this game of telephone where he has his Patreon account, and then people, I assume these news outlets are subscribed, like these certain Twitter accounts that report on literally any crumb of DCU possible information. They report on it. I'm not sure. Maybe his verbiage is, maybe he's liberal. Maybe as far as he's like, I guess it could be. That's because the tweet that started this whole thing is he expects Damian to be the Robin. That doesn't really mean anything. He just expects it. That could just be an inference based on his assumption that Brave and the Bold would come out before Teen Titans. But the fact that when you add all these things together, Brave and the Bold's production is contingent on the Batman Part 2. The Batman Part 2 right now is a mystery. Whatever the hell is going to be in that movie, Matt Reeves doesn't even know for a fact. He has like a week to finish the first draft, and then drafts of movies can become wildly different. The production of the Star Wars movies is pretty famous. There's a lot of material you can track down there. The first draft of A New Hope, wildly different. The first drafts of Empire, Return of the Jedi, wildly different than what actually got produced, what actually we all saw and history remembers. So no one knows what that movie is going to be. That movie determines then the fate of Brave and the Bold. And that means James Gunn doesn't even know what that movie's going to be. James Gunn doesn't have a concrete notion of what the Batman universe is going to look like. Obviously, we've seen Batman, we've seen Clayface and Creature Commandos, but beyond that, we have no idea. James Gunn doesn't know. I'm sure he knows what he'd like to do, but we don't even know if he's going to be writing Brave and the Bold. So with that, all that said, the likelihood that Damian Wayne, this character that James Gunn officially wants to introduce in Brave and the Bold, the fact that that character would appear, likely what's going to happen, and what did happen is this, her name's Anna, I forget her last name, but the writer of Supergirl, she wrote a Teen Titans script that was all her own, presented it to James Gunn, and the likelihood of that sharing any DNA with Brave and the Bold, which in my estimations, I think they probably start writing that. Even if they started writing it as soon as they lock in the script for Batman Part 2, writing a script can take like months and months. It can take like 4 to 8 months typically for some of these big blockbuster movies. And it's Batman. James Gunn loves Batman. I predict he's going to end up writing the movie. But the likelihood that Teen Titans comes out before any of these Batman productions, to me, it's very likely, because this is literally the only script outside of the handful of things that have started production, and we have shots of Green Lantern, we obviously Superman's coming out, Supergirl, Peacemaker. Teen Titans is the only other project that they're like, yup, everything's going great, the script looks good, it's awesome. That can't be said for any of these potential shows or movies. There's some snag, and so that says to me Teen Titans is going to come out before Brave and the Bold for sure, unless they just arbitrarily sit on a great script, which goes against the verbiage that James Gunn's been using, which is like, if it's a great script, then we're making it. If it's ready, it's going to get made. The fact that is so early on compared to Brave and the Bold means that there's nothing in place for Damian. There's no way that Damian could be in Teen Titans, could be introduced in that movie when James Gunn, as far as we know, does not want that to be the case. And then otherwise, it's just a complete mystery. I'm like I said at the start of this, I'm not convinced Damian will be in Brave and the Bold. I think that permutations for men, and I think realistically, it's not a James Gunn script. James Gunn loves Damian. Apparently, that's his favorite Robin. I'm not sure if he's gonna. He said The Flash was one of the greatest comic book movies ever. So I don't know. It's a complete mystery. All of this is such a mystery, and is such a work in progress. I think the only people that know what Robin they're using, I don't think it's likely to be Damian. I think from a screenwriting perspective, it would be so much harder to do Damian's Teen Titans team because you're skipping all these origins on characters most people don't know about. You're skipping the most popular stories that the people who do know about them would want to see adapted, like stories from the cartoons. You wouldn't be having the most recognizable Robin as the main character. And the fact is, I think this movie is also going to predate Brave and the Bold, which means there's no obligation to include, say, Nightwing. There's no obligation to include Damian. But that's more or less. I could maybe go into a little bit more insight if my co-hosts have specific questions. But yeah.
It's such an interesting. I do agree with almost everything you said. It's just unfortunate because when he made that initial announcement, I was like, oh, he probably has not a full script, but here's what we want from each movie, and here's how they're all going to fit together. When that initial announcement was made, was my initial thought. But it seems that with something like the Authority being then be like, okay, that doesn't work with the Superman script. Does that, how did that happen? Why would you announce that when you then go say, we couldn't make that? Because there's other things that you were saying, like the Waller Show or Swamp Thing, that have other issues where it's either directors or we're not quite finished with the script fully. That could be okay, because it's just we know what we want to do, but it's just not coming together perfectly. It is weird because also you said it takes 2 to 3 years for a movie to fully be made. Superman comes out in 2 months. Supergirl comes out next year. If they want a movie for 27, that movie has to be starting pre-production sometime soon, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if that's the situation, the only thing that we've heard anything like a script's being turned in and people liking it is Teen Titans. But then the problem with Teen Titans, I assume, is going to be something. If one of their major pillars is going to be Batman, I assume Gunn wants to be heavily involved in all of that. So anything to do with the character, that he'd want to have tight control, which might mean that Teen Titans script maybe gets delayed, right? And then what do we have next? Do we have any? Like, actually, no. You said it. We have no other confirmation of any other scripts being close to complete. It is. It feels unfathomable to me for them to say we have this extremely popular team. They were the most popular team for a while, right? It was late 90s with the X-Men. It was them and the X-Men were the most popular team. They have the show. They've had a consistent animated show since like the 2000s. You guys might not like Teen Titans Go. People do like Teen Titans Go, right? That's the Titan. And then just to be like, yes, we're gonna make a Titans movie, and here are a bunch of characters you've never seen before, and it just seems so. It would be maybe one of the worst ways to start a verse if that. Imagine we, in a couple months' time, we actually get an announcement and like, yep, this is the Damien's Teen Titans team. I'm like, man, I like that run, sure, but like, that would be actually legitimately awful. I think, right?
Yeah, it's a case of, shooting themselves in the foot for no good reason. Because like you and Crisis mentioned, there is a team and there is an expectation to see that specific team. I think that the creatives understand that. I don't know why the writer would be on fire for a team that has like had 2 runs and wasn't very notable when there is a team that exists out there that is uber popular and has been adapted in a bunch of different ways. Even if you want to talk about different instances like Young Justice, which was a very, very popular animated series. That wasn't Teen Titans necessarily, but the DNA of that team was like all over that show. And not to mention the animated movies that are not connected to the Cartoon Network series that were part of the DCAMU, is that what that's called? The DC Animated Movie Universe. Too many acronyms, but yeah, so that team, the specific team, and we all know who we're talking about, and for the people that don't know, it's Robin, it's Beast Boy, it's Starfire, it's Raven, and it's Cyborg. Those 5 specifically. Now, you can add in other characters, of course, from the comic books. There's Donna Troy, there's Aqualad, there is, of course, Kid Flash. But the 5 that we're talking about are the 5 that people most know and most associate with the Teen Titans. If you're not doing that, you're asking for a public reception of the announcement to be god-awful. And we've seen that time and time again with other superhero universes where they just make an announcement that is so baffling and makes no sense that it just leaves you, scratching your head. And then it comes out and you're like, yeah, we could have told you that was a bad idea, and it ended up being a bad idea. The characters are popular for a reason. Make a movie about the popular characters. Now, if you want to insert Damien in and have the rest of the 4 that I just mentioned be a part of the film, again, that is part of like the comic book run. Throw in Aqualad as well. But it's not going to be the same without, of course, Dick Grayson. So I guess it all hinges on the fact that there is a super popular team, and it would be stupid not to use that team. Like, it would just be baffling. And there is no universe where I would understand the decision-making tree that led to this particular decision, where you make a Teen Titans team and it doesn't have Robin, Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven. or some
I
combination
yeah.
of those.
Yeah, I
because
mean,
I was
go
also
on,
gonna
Trevor.
say just because it's gonna feature a Robin. I feel like I guess there's a question for both of you. Do you guys think that maybe that's why it might be held back? Because no matter what, if you introduce Dick, whether he's Robin or Nightwing, that's gonna have implications on Batman, and then that's have implications on if it is a Batman and Robin, whatever that Robin is, whatever decisions are made immediately in the Teen Titans movie, we will then be able to reverse engineer backwards into that, right? So, do you guys think that will slow down that production at all?
I think it depends on so many factors that we just don't have any idea. Like the nature of their Batman, the nature of James Gunn Batman is it's a mystery. You know, we don't know. I mean, again, it's like we take the announcement that there's going to be Damian in the movie for granted. That's like in the Batman movie because of all the stuff we said with Authority. I mean, that's a whole movie that they're like it's on the back burner because a lot of our other projects step on the toes of the Authority. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that must necessarily be true. I don't know why not just change the Authority to fit then. Um, but you look at that and it's like, okay, well, maybe the screenwriter for the Titans movie put out this script based on the new Teen Titans, the most seminal Teen Titans storyline, which includes Dick Grayson as a star, and they look at it and they go, yeah, I mean, this script is so good that we're gonna have to just say Batman is 10 years later, or this movie is a flashback, or like Sergeant Rock is going to be like this, the Paradise Lost Wonder Woman show if these things get made in those as we understand them, will be flashback movies.
Which I would love. I think it's a great idea. I mean, it fills in the history, and we've had those movies before in the MCU, where we had that in Phase One. We got a Captain America movie, right? Which led right into Avengers. This is obviously not the same like time difference, but if you want to use, I guess, something closer, you could take a look at Captain Marvel, or Eternals, which took place in the past present. So I think it's definitely something that can work, has shown to work in the past in these huge shared universes, and I think it would just absolutely be foolish for them to not use the team, as I said before. And I said when it was just me and Crisis here, even if it was you take like a modern day, okay, let's operate under the assumption that Damian is going to be Robin in the new universe, and he's going to be Robin with Batman because that's just what we've been told, despite what Crisis has brought up, which I think is completely valid. But let's operate under the assumption that that's going to be true. Then you can easily make a movie that is, I don't know, 35% past Teen Titans stuff. Let's say Damian wants to make his new team, and he's learning about the old team as the movie goes along. You have plot A and plot B. Plot B is the old team. Plot A is the new team, and then they intertwine and come together in the end. Whenever the climax of the films happens, and that I think would be the toughest sell out of.
I don't.
But I would still accept that because again we've seen James Gunn do that exact thing with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where the main plot was in the present and the B plot was in the past, and they all came to a head at the end with Rocket Raccoon, getting his reckoning. That's something that can work, and I would be more than happy to see, especially if it's Dick being in a mentor role, trying to shepherd a new group of Teen Titans in, potentially, and the old group is just the Titans or whatever. Or
That
potential Justice League members. Go ahead.
I think that might be the only way I could stomach it. Because again, I don't know if I've said this on here. I do like the fact that the Teen Titans are now just the Titans.
Yeah.
And then Damian has taken over the Teen Titans, right? I think it's a cool progression. But again, we're skipping so much where they'll have implications where all three of us will understand the implications that they're trying to give it. That's fine. I can get that. but I want to see that, right? It is.
No, I agree. It is
Infinity
a
War and
crazy
Endgame,
compromise. Yeah.
don't have the same emotion. We've seen the Avengers, so Infinity War and Endgame just hit harder than if we had given some vague history about what they had done, because it's a different emotion when it's like, oh, this vague history of this legendary figure versus, yeah, I was there, I watched that, I saw, I went to the cinemas and saw that. It's just, I don't, I think to have Damien there forces a compromise that I feel like is unnecessary.
No, I totally agree.
I just don't.
I was thinking at it
it's
too
needed.
from the perspective of like a screenwriter, like what would be more, because obviously the first rule is show don't tell.
Yeah.
In a movie with Damien, there's two possibilities. The possibility that circumvents this problem, which would be, let's say, the Teen Titans as we knew them in the 80s happened off screen in the past, and then Damien is being caught up to speed, in certain respects. That would be telling instead of showing, right? You would say, okay, Starfire makes some offhanded comment. Oh, me when Dick was the leader, we beat Trigon. Damien, you need to catch up. It's like we'd all rather just see that. We'd all rather just see that awesome adventure where these characters are, doing interesting things. Now that is lame, and you have to think you're a Hollywood screenwriter. And the other option would be, and this is complete nightmare scenario. And if they did this, I'm out. It's a non-starter for me. Scrap the whole thing. I'm going back to the Snyderverse. Okay, is Damien is the Robin that creates the Teen Titans. That, however it is in the 80s comics, it's Raven that sends out a message to the Justice League. They say you're a demon, we're not helping you, so she recruits the Titans instead. In the show, it's the Gordanians attack, and then Starfire's on the run, and then the Titans all happen to be in the same city, and they team up. If that were to happen, team specifically, and it's just Damien that finds them. Damien is the first human that meets Starfire. Damien is, the first leader of the Teen Titans. Then that's a non-starter. And you just have to think, you're a screenwriter, you read these comics, and then you're like, is it really, you can't have a artistic or you can't have any integrity in this comic book space, right, of adapting these stories, and read New Teen Titans and see Dick Grayson's involvement as just a superficial, just change his name to Damien and it works. It doesn't work. They're different characters. Dick, Jason, Tim, Damien. They have a mantle. They have a shared mantle. They are all very distinct characters, and you will only piss off and alienate fans if you do option B. If you do option A, which is it's all backstory, you'll still probably piss off everybody. Because and then also you brought up a good point, Garrick, is that, and I crunched the numbers on this too. Damien as a Teen Titan has like 60 issues worth of him being on the team. Tim has like 150, and Dick has like 600, and that includes like him being on the Titans. So all of his interplay with Starfire, Cyborg, Raven, Beast Boy, Wonder Girl, etc. That's like 600 issues of him being on that team. That's not counting books like The Outsiders, where there's a couple of Titans members as well. So inevitably, and this is the problem, I think, with starting with Damien, which I think I could see this just changing. I think I could just see this creating too many problems, and they decide not to do it. Is inevitably, if you add Damien to the roster and you try to have him play a big part, there are only so many Teen Titans stories that take place with Damien that inevitably you're going to start artificially injecting him into stories like the Judas Contract, or their battle with Trigon, or Brother Blood, or the Hive, or any number of these classic adventures, that it is, like True said, it's unnecessary. It's just not necessary. Don't use Damien. Just use Dick Grayson, the Robin that, and this is the bigger point here, and I feel like I'm at liberty to talk this long because I'm so passionate about it. I've read all this stuff. But Marv Wolfman created these characters. He created Raven, Cyborg, Beast Boy. I don't think he created Beast Boy. Raven, Cyborg, and Starfire to inform Dick Grayson's character arc, which was stepping out of Batman's shadow. And the path that they wanted from the start was to eventually give him his own mantle. And Marv Wolfman has said this in interviews that him and George Perez were trying to build to this Nightwing, reveal that this is now who he is. He's his own man, and using the Titans as a tool to do that. That is not Damian's narrative. That's not those characters do not exist. They're not created to service Damian. It would be like if all of a sudden in this new cinematic universe, Superman dies and then John Kent takes over and he's the first one to meet Clark Kent and find the Justice League to create that team. That's offensive. Like that would be terrible. And I don't think it's a reach to say that Dick Grayson is just as important to and is and can be to the cinematic universe just as important as a Superman level character. I don't think you can superficially just swap it out. Say, oh, he's Damian, maybe he's a little bit edgier. Maybe Judas Contract happens, but Robin's a little bit edgier. That would be such a slap in the face to all of the stories that were written, all the fans who have loved them, all of the fans who have loved the adaptations of those stories that feature Dick Grayson at the center.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Garrick?
I was just I was just giving some crazy heat too.
Yeah.
I muted because Nick's dog was barking, but there. It's all good though, Nick. I love him. He's great. He's the best. You should have named him Crypto though. Just a little side tangent. He looks just like him.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let me start over. What I was saying was, if you were to do all of that and insert Damian, it's not just a disservice to Damian or to Dick, it's a disservice to Damian as well, because Damian has a lot of really cool stories with Batman in the New 52 run, where he's working alongside Bruce, which is informed by the previous run where he was working alongside Dick, who was Batman. So him and his father butt heads often because Damian kind of disagrees and doesn't mesh with his father as well as he did with Dick there towards the end. And of course, Dick and Damian had a learning curve, but they, at the end of that run, were working really well together. And now he's working with a completely different Batman, a man that he doesn't really know that much, that is his father, that expects him to respect him, not only as his father, but also as Robin and his sidekick. And it's just a lot of fun. And I would be really excited to see that in a Batman and Robin movie. I'm a big fan of Damian, just as James Gunn is. I like all the Robins. But if we want to do that, you can't properly tell that story without first knowing about Dick as not only Nightwing, but Batman as well. I doubt that he'll be Batman before Brave and the Bold happens, but could at least have him be Nightwing and have all of that experience leading the Teen Titans. So it would be shitty for both characters, and for me as a fan of both characters, to have each of their stories completely bastardized, because Dick doesn't lean on Damian as nearly as much as Damian leans on Dick, just because Dick is the older, he's the one who looks up to him. But Damian's also a big part of Dick's growth as a character as well, because that's his Robin, right? Like, that's his guy. So it's integral to who Dick is as a character in the current day, his experience and relationship having Damian as his Robin. So I think it would be shitty for every character involved if that were to happen.
I have seen this happen couple of times now. It seems to be only DC So the Supergirl show started. I was very hyped. I like Supergirl stuff, and multiple seasons, and it was just she was in Metropolis with Superman's cast of characters telling Superman stories, and every season I was just like, this is just so like insanely stupid because are you saying that yes, we made a Supergirl show, but this character doesn't have enough stories for us to tell, which is not true. So you're just gonna give her all the Superman stories? You're just a lazy writer. This is just
I mean, they did the same thing
like
with Arrow
it's
in
Yeah.
Batman.
I can give you a little bit more credit with that because they use some of the characters, one or two of the arcs are the same, but I give them enough distinction there, right? But it's literally just the the thing with the plant. It's just the same story again, and it's just like these are not Supergirl
The Black
stories. This is
Mercy.
not these are not her arcs. These are not her character. Like what like I lost all. I like these stories for Superman, and I want to watch a Supergirl show for Supergirl. And the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see this happen occasionally with Hal and John, and it's like, man, you want to use John, but for some reason you want to give him Hal's stories. They have completely different arcs as well. They do different things, and especially for the Robins, I think when people start getting into comics, like one of the most like famous things about comics is that each one of the Robins gives something different to Batman, and that is true. That is a thing that I can go out and say, hey, random fan in the street that you seen a couple of Batman things, and they can understand that these guys are not interchangeable. Yet you expect me to believe somebody like I do believe Gunn has read comics and does like them. This is not lip service for him, right? We've seen his old blogs, right? We've read through some of his history. So he's been here for a while, right? So then how do you sit there, somebody with that experience, and say, yeah, let's swap them out? That doesn't, I don't know. It feels so disrespectful to everything. It's just like, I don't care. I'm doing my own thing, which is like, I don't know. I think it's super shitty on pretty much every level.
It's insulting too because what you're doing when you are stealing from one character to give to another is you're saying this character is not good enough. You're saying Jon Stewart's not good enough. He needs a Hal story to boost his stocks. Damien's not good enough. He needs a Dick Grayson story to boost his stocks, etc. I mean, and a lot of the time it is, in these instances, it is kind of like or formality or something. Like with Arrow, CW did not have the rights to do a television show about Batman because Fox at the time still did, and that's why you got the Gotham show. And then you look at like MCU Peter Parker got a lot of the elements from the 1610 Miles run. A lot of that character was injected into Peter. Most famously, probably Genki is clearly Ned Leeds. Ned Leeds in the comics is nothing like Ned Leeds in the MCU, but that's pretty much Genki. Even the Into the Spider-Verse guys were like, yeah, we couldn't really use Genki at all because they stole all of it for Homecoming. So that's an kind of a formality because they'd already the past two iterations of Spider-Man had already taken so much from 616 that they needed some flavor from Miles to diversify the MCU's version of Peter Parker. But we've never gotten a big screen version of these stories. We've never gotten a live action Teen Titans movie. We've never gotten it's been since like 1997 that we got live action Dick Grayson with Batman and Robin, which was terrible.
Well, let's not say terrible. I love that.
Terribly funny.
Okay.
Terribly good
movie.
time.
The
There's
Bat
top 3 Batman movies that came out that year. I'm sure.
That's true. That had a good soundtrack, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, the back credit card. That was that movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Peak.
So, we haven't seen these stories. We haven't even seen any of the new Teen Titans in a movie ever. We haven't seen Starfire. Well, we saw Cyborg technically, but that's a bit of a gray area. But yeah, most of these guys we haven't seen them in a movie, and they exist within the context of Dick Grayson found them. Dick Grayson helped them in a lot of ways. They helped Dick Grayson become his own person in a lot of ways, and that's the context that they were made for. And I think it speaks to hubris to change it that fundamentally. Obviously, these things you can take liberties with, but once you change the fundamental ingredients so hard, it loses its identity and it loses its integrity. Again, you can just go down the list and just think like, well, I was doing this thought experiment on my stream the other day, but it's like if you looked at, and that's another thing too, when you look at the verbiage that Gunn is using for the Teen Titans script, it's an awesome script. It just needs fiddling. Fiddling is not swapping Dick for Tim or Tim for Damien or Damien for Tim. That's not fiddling. That changes the whole movie depending on what character the Robin is, what is, who he actually is. And I looked at, some random Guardians from the comics, right? And I was like, well, if you gave someone the Guardians of the Galaxy 1 script, and they're like, just swap out Rocket for that one Skrull in the 90s Guardians run. It's like it doesn't work. That's not fiddling, and it also changes the whole movie entirely. So, yeah, I think mapping out the timeline and looking at the nature of Brave and the Bold, the nature of the Batman, the nature of how James Gunn is so far, greenlighting these movies and then being produced, I think it's probably not possible for Damian to be in Teen Titans. I think if he shows up first, it will be in Brave and the Bold, and I think that movie is kind of cursed almost, or contingent on the nature of Batman Part 2, whatever that script of that movie looks like whenever that gets released. Brave and the Bold will be released after, I imagine, at least a year after, for the the Batman Part 2 embers to cool. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be into Teen Titans. I think that leaker doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's just speculating, and then people kind of ran with it that it's a fact, or it's like a hot scoop.
Hot
I think
scoop of dog shit is what it is. If I could speak frankly and plainly to the people out there, the DCU Experience. But I mean, there were other rumors that were started and sort of kindled by other scoopers or leakers, whatever you want to call them. Potential stopgap or intermediary between the two eras could be a Tim Drake type vibe. With Cassie and Superboy and Bart Allen, that type of team. First of all, shut your mouth. Great team.
Wait. I was not.
You were about to say something out of pocket that was going to get you kicked out of the podcast, and I saved you from it. But of course, obviously, I'd prefer the new Teen Titans team. But if we were to get Tim Drake, I have a little soft spot in my heart for Timmy. My favorite Robin of the Robins. Would love to see that, but not before the original team, like under any circumstances. However, if you put a gun to my freaking head and said, Garrick, you're getting Damian Wayne Teen Titans, or you're getting Tim Drake Teen Titans, I'll take Timmy, thank you, very much, all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. But that's just my opinion.
Make that Young Justice, then? Would you not just make that the
Young sure. Justice team? Yeah. Because... But the problem is the Teen Titans name carries too much weight. So if you're gonna make a team, you're gonna use that name, right?
That I'm not gonna lie. That's another one of those dumb. Like, why would you change?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation.
I would prefer Tim as well. I would prefer Tim to Damian, but yeah, you still ultimately, it becomes problem A again, where Starfire and Cyborg would be there because they're too famous, Raven, Beast Boy, and unless they say Tim finds the team, like the awful New 52 run where Tim was the founder of the Teen Titans and there was no
terrible, and a bad team as well,
and a bad team.
Robin.
Cassie was there. Relax.
Sorry, what did I say?
Relax. You need to.
I said the bad art, right?
You need to check your mic. Maybe my headphones are screwed up because you definitely didn't say what I thought you said. But I genuinely would be kind of okay with that team showing up and the Titans existing. Like, again, it would really suck, and we talked about it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, to miss out on the history and witness that with my own two eyes and seeing it on the big screen. That is what I want. That's what I need in my soul. But I would genuinely be okay if the Titans existed, had a history, and are operating as the Titans right now. That being the new Teen Titans, like classic team that everybody loves, Marv Wolfman, all that. I would be okay with that because there is always the possibility for us to learn more about that team's DCU experience. Boom, nailed it. In other media, whether it's comics or an animated show or whatever. We see this with Star Wars all the time, where missing pieces of the puzzle are all the time being added, not only in Legends, but in canon. The most prominent, I guess, most recent, pertinent thing that comes to mind is Andor, obviously, the whole lead up to A New Hope, and how Andor, in a lot of ways, makes that film better, if you can believe it, based on the quality that we've gotten. Obviously, we don't want to wait 50 years for that to happen, right? We don't want to wait 50 years to see the Teen Titans do their classic, crazy, zany adventures that we all know and love. But that is a potential, again, compromise. If we're forced at gunpoint to compromise, then I can come up with a lot that I would still be satisfied with, not necessarily overjoyed or, super happy with, but definitely something that I could be satisfied with and enjoy. Because, again, I do love most of these versions of the Teen Titans that we're talking about, and I'd love to see all of them, but not before the main team. But if they're not going to give me the main team, at least give me some hopium that there's something down the line that I can learn about those stories in a real, I don't want to be like, I genuinely don't want to be like this, but I've read the comics, and if I want to read Teen Titans comics, then I'll just read the ones that have come out that are amazing, that I love. I don't want to read a different version of those comics that happens to be canon to the movie universe. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to get a Tim Drake Teen Titans movie, and then 6 months later they're like, okay, the Titans exist, let's talk about their previous adventures in a comic book. Well, I could just read those are the new Teen Titans. I could just read that.
You also just watch the animated series.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So if they made an animated series or a comic, it would be less cool or iconic.
A comic would be the worst of the options. Not that I don't love comics, it's just I can read those stories, and an animated series would be at least a little bit different because we're getting the new voices, we're getting more, I guess, character from the actors and all that, and we get to, I guess, get a little bit of more of that multimedia, tangible relationship with the characters because you can hear them outside of the voices in your head. You know what I mean? So,
and there's also a quick thing. So, Bane Deathstroke movie got announced. We have no idea where that's going. And I was just thinking, man, Deathstroke, because I was going to say earlier that Teen Titans team has a bunch of stories that have
two of Batman's best villains
that have been have been done in other media that people like, right? So I'm just wondering, how does Deathstroke fit into this? Then I guess Deathstroke was around before the Titans showed up, but I'm just wondering how
the Terminator.
Yeah, that's gonna then fit in with the Titans.
I would guess he is like a legendary mercenary, already, and then the Titan, you do the traditional story where Jericho then takes up his contract and then dies, and then Deathstroke assumes that and has to hunt the Titans forever. But what I'll also say about the Tim thing is Tim's run, it just seems like no matter where you go, no matter which Robin you swap out, you're going to eventually have a scenario where the wrong Robin is in Dick's stories because Dick's in the most Titan stories. And if you read the Jeff Johns Teen Titans, that was very much the John's doing John's thing. Just make a sequel to a classic story that everyone loves, skip over all the weird, middle child, the 90s Titans, all that stuff. It's great. It's a sequel to Judas Contract. As soon as the run starts, it's Deathstroke and Jericho. Trigon comes back at some point. Brother Blood comes back at some point, the son of the Brother Blood that was in the 80s comics. So it's you either, again, that's all. If they adapted Tim's stories, which I think the reason we'd want Tim and the Teen Titans is to see the Tim stories, they would just be sequels to the 80s stories that would then get referenced and, oh, Brother Blood was different when we fought him the first time. Like, that only is cool if we saw that. That keeps being the problem we come back to. And then if they don't do that, then they either make something up new completely, which I guess, but like, does anyone want complete fan fiction? We want something staked in the material we love. And then, or it's like I said, it's Tim Drake is the first Robin to fight Brother Blood ever, and it's abominable. It's just not right.
Sister Blood, Father
She's
Blood,
real.
Daughter
Mother
Blood,
Blood's real.
Cousin Blood,
Blood Collective. Well, I'm pretty sure that's it.
Grandpappy Blood. Let's go. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need to say about that topic, the Teen Titans and all that. We've hammered it home over multiple podcasts, and that's how we feel. Give us the stuff we want, but we will compromise. Just don't give Damien or Tim all of Dick's stories and just completely bastardize everything we love. We're willing to compromise with you, but we at the end of the day, it's sort of a trust James Gunn type vibe. We've already got a writer for Titans, like we said. They're passionate about it. The studio is passionate about it. It can't be some crazy shit, we just have to.
I'm not willing
believe.
to compromise. I'm not willing to compromise.
Okay, well,
I'll say that.
I am. If I am willing to compromise, I'll be back. If it's like, all right, we're doing Tim Drake, he's the leader of the Teen Titans, or we're doing Damien, I'm willing to compromise as long as the Titans exist and had history. See, I'm not willing to compromise if they didn't and don't. That's the difference.
I don't know, man.
I'll be disappointed, but I'm not going to give up on DC movies forever because of that. That's all I'm saying.
But like my favorite stories about my favorite character are just rendered lip service. They're not actually...
I agree with you. I would I would be in a shitty mood. I'm just saying I would never watch another DC movie or cancel the podcast or not make YouTube videos about it because of this thing. I'd just be really upset about it, and I'd rant about it for an hour to a decade. Somewhere in between there, I would complain about it. I'm sure I would probably bring it up every podcast, but I don't think I'd give up on it entirely, is what I'm saying.
Is it worse to have never had it or to have had it and it be bad? Right? Like,
to never have it.
Bad. No, I 100% disagree. And I even thought, I asked someone the other night, I'm like, if you were, let's say someone's excited for Batman versus Superman, right? Mm-hmm. And then you prove to them in their heart of hearts that it's going to be awful. Would you rather it not exist? And the person said yes, because it would help DC. It would help DC if something that bad just never happened.
Well, that's what I was saying. I'd rather not have it at all. Like, I'd rather the Titans show not exist.
Right.
Well,
but in this scenario, I would, in this scenario, I'd rather the Titans are just relegated to backstory. I'd rather just it not have. I'd rather there be no Titans than the best stories are rendered lip service, are just we're never going to see them, and that's not the focus. The best stories are not the most important.
Yes.
We're not going to see them.
That's true.
I'd rather it just not exist.
The difference between those scenarios that we came up with, Titans, BVS, those are just actively bad. But if you had a Tim Drake or a Damian Wayne Team Titans, for example, and it's like a good movie, you would still rather not have the good movie.
I'm going to say the damage it would do for going forward is too much. Now, I'm a Wonder Woman fan, and I know about damage. I love Injustice. That shit is cancerous to any fucking conversation.
Yeah, but that's like a terrible mischaracterization of...
Yes.
In this hypothetical... it's not...
A bad characterization is worse than none.
But we're not saying it's a bad characterization. We're saying that the characterization happened off screen. We're saying, like, the Titans exist. They're good characters, but all their stories happened off screen. That's a difference between a bad characterization, which happened in Injustice.
No, what I'm saying, though, is that would give people a different vibe to what the Titans is, right? Because if you have Damien take over or Tim take over, and they have any part of, like, they have the sequel to Judas Contract, that changes the vibe completely. And what you would then get for the standard audience is it was Dick or it was Damien or Tim in these stories, and I think that would ruin what these stories were, right? And I think that is the bad
I don't
thing,
disagree
right?
with
It's
you.
the same thing. I'm going to say, because it's already happened, right? With the fact that, again, Wonder Woman bias here again. Donna Troy has been missing. She's been in, I think it was either, I forgot the number now. It's either the most or the second most Titans comics after Dick, right? And she's been missing completely from the history of that team outside of the comic. That is crazy.
I mean, somebody didn't watch Titans.
She
Ignore
was
the
there
fact
for
that she got
13
electrocuted
seconds.
by
They
a live
killed her in the most like
wire.
embarrassing
it was,
way.
it was
Right.
so-
There you go, right?
I
And
don't
it's
think
like,
we're disagreeing. I don't think any of us are really disagreeing all that much.
a little bit, but it's just like I think I completely understand that. Like, I would rather it just not be there, because maybe eventually we'll get good characterization. But like, man, sometimes
It
having
all
that bad
depends on the
characterization
timeline.
is-
Because if we're operating under the assumption that Damian is the Robin, that means that there are 3 other Robins that are older than him, and we've already had these stories off screen. You can't have a 20 or 30-year-old Teen Titan Dick doing these stories from the beginning. So if Damian's the Robin, then all of that is just what we're gonna. It's just gonna happen off screen, or we're gonna get it in a flashback movie.
You can't have like Damien doesn't. So that Damien was with that original Teen Titans team for a very short period of time, because he got his own team like halfway through the run.
It was
right?
20 issues in roughly when.
Those 20
when
issues were pretty cool, and then the new team was like.
But compare that to
half
the
that
one
was John
over.
as well. Like you had Superboy. So now how are you gonna do John Kent? Because like half the arcs was them dealing with him.
Damien and
So
John,
now-
it's not possible.
I don't
to do
disagree,
that.
but what I am saying is Damien is not going to inherit these stories inherently. That's not
There's
what
no
I'm
shot.
saying. I'm saying that
There's no shot,
all
man.
of this history has to have happened in the past. We are starting in a DCU with history already. So Batman is going to
understand how that
have
works, though.
some of his stories are going to have already happened. They're going to be referenced. We're not going to see all of them.
Damien will inherently inherit
Have to.
Dick stories, because there's only like 20 issues of Damien with the new Teen Titans team. There's no way they don't shove him into.
So my
Contract,
thing is,
Trigon.
if this Titans movie is going to exist in a universe where Damien is Robin, then it would necessarily have to be a movie that takes place in the past, like Captain Marvel.
which
That's what I'm
which
saying.
is
Which would
is
be awesome.
preferable, and if not that, I don't want it. I don't want
That
it. If
I
it's
think
not
that's the best case
That's
scenario.
fine, then.
If we
Yeah,
get
that's
a
fine.
whole Teen Titans movie that happened in the past, and then. All right, in the Superman current timeline, we have the grown-up adult Titans. So we're not going to get every single step of the way, but you kind of have to make some sort of sacrifice if we're going to be in a universe with a rich history from the beginning.
I think we talked about this nearly quite a while ago now, where we were talking about what do we need for these stories, and it's the essences of these stories. We all know it's not going to be one-to-one recreations of the story. Like the Superman movie is coming out, it's not a one-to-one creation of any Superman comic that's come out, right? So how do you have, like, you have this history and you're starting near the end, okay, but then you have such a small amount that once you start referencing anything, Deathstroke's past history, that was with Dick. You want to do it Brother Blood, Trigon, any of that stuff, now you're gonna have to bring that up, and that emotional weight is gonna go on to Damien if Dick is not part of the team. And I think that is bad inherently, because I don't see how you do new stories unless you say we're not going to use any of the Titans villains, like, or maybe this is the first time they see them. So like, is this the first time they fight Deathstroke? So now instead of Deathstroke being a Dick villain, it's now a Damien villain.
Yeah.
Or is this the first time Trigon shows up? Like, then we're truncating their history down a lot, where they have just Nebulous, they're stopping villains, versus these are like the major story arcs that they went through. I just don't see how we could have that point without eating into the history of
I mean, it's certainly it's certainly a tough ask to do this from the beginning, because we are going into a universe that is not starting at day one, which is, I think, something that we were all initially excited about to varying degrees, because we can sort of yada yada the stuff that we know about that has been done to death. But then we get into specific scenarios where Hal Jordan is kind of an old guy and has probably done a lot of stuff in his past, which we don't necessarily love. And now we're getting into this Damian Teen Titans thing. But if we're going to be in a universe that has established superheroes across the board, we're not getting the genesis of any of these heroes, really. I don't know where Crisis went. Then,
He was lagging a little bit.
oh, he's back.
Yeah.
That's sort of like a necessary sacrifice. I don't want to sacrifice too much, though. I'm in 100% agreement with both of you. I want the stories to be told, and I want to see the stories happen from start to finish.
A quick thing on I just want to say, on Green Lantern, with Hal, he's old, but almost every single one of the major Hal stories, you can still tell with the whole Hal, right? You can still do Emerald Knight. You can still, like, the only thing that we're really missing is Abin Sur, which we'll probably get a flashback, or him and Sinestro. Like, we're not going to get that either, right? So really, those are the two major things. Every other story arc you can do.
Yeah. But if let's say we're getting into a Justice League with Wally West instead of Barry Allen as the Flash, then that necessitates the Teen Titans stuff already happened in the past because he's on the Justice League, right? He's the Flash. He's the Flash. He's not Kid Flash anymore. So
but that's a weird one because the Barry stuff is going to be so weird. It's a
As far as we know, Wally West in the present is Kid Flash, according to the Creature Commandos guy.
Right, that's true.
Okay, so if he's Kid Flash, it means there's.
I also just think when we're talking about stuff with the sacrificing of the Teen Titans, we don't want to sacrifice too much because we're probably inherently going to miss the original Teen Titans. No matter any of these options, because they're just not as iconic. As Starfire.
Garth ain't showing up.
No, and I mean, like, it's one of those things where you're like, oh well, I'm fine with skipping Garth and Speedy, and when Donna Troy initially shows up, I'm fine with that. Oh, I'm fine with them skipping.
Some super old heads are gonna be upset about that.
Yeah, I'm fine with them skipping the Marv Wolfman stories because they'll at least have happened and they'll be, we can imagine in our heads that they were really cool when Starfire references them or Nightwing references them.
Right.
But I'm not worth sacrificing that. Those are the best stories.
I agree.
I don't like what would I rather sacrifice? Damian's Rebirth run or Marv Wolfman's 16-year saga spanning, all the super iconic stories.
I wish that Damian was not the Robin. I wish Dick was Robin terrible. At the start of the verse. Yeah. But being told that it's Damian, and again, I'm in camp. Okay, Crisis has done the research. Maybe there's a reality where we get to where there's a different Robin. Damian, it's just I don't want to start the verse with Damian. There's too much of that history that is going to be summarized in. I mean, Batman is my favorite superhero. I got a Batman shirt on right now. I want to see how all of this stuff affects Batman. Even if the first movie was like Batman and Dick, and then Dick quits. The second movie, Jason gets killed. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Maybe that's a little too fast, but like, I do want to see. I want to see a Batman actor on screen grapple with the fact that he let one of his Robins die, and then 10 years later we have Red Hood show up, and it's the guy grown up. It's the Robin. Like, that would be awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want that stuff.
Now we're thinking about it. Why are we assuming all the Robins are going to be around? Because the ones that seem to be confirmed would be Dick and Damian. Does that mean Jason and
they're not gonna not have Jason? Jason is too iconic and popular at this point as the Red Hood persona. Red Hood? I mean,
that's another thing too. Is Damian existing? It's like him being around ruins everything else because we're gonna have Damian poking his head in during Under the Red Hood, right? Like, assuming they want to have their cake and eat it too. Damian's here, but we still want to cover the iconic Batman stories because the fact of the matter is, as well with Damian, is he doesn't even have right now. I mean, Damian's been around for 16 years. He's still doing the nature versus nurture thing. Like, they don't have a conclusive thematic cinematic arc they could adapt. There is no end in sight when you add him. There is for Dick, for Jason, even for Tim to some extent. If you started with them and worked your way up, you know, Damian, we don't need to see Damian's end because, like I said, right now in the comics there isn't a natural, like, let's say if they started with Dick, even him becoming Nightwing, that could be the end, right? We can just say, like, as far as a satisfying cinematic, you know, trilogy or 3-act structure. Damian doesn't have one of those. Damian shows up. He hangs out with Bruce Wayne for less than 10 issues, or just about 10. Then Bruce fucking goes back in time in Final Crisis. Then for like 20 issues, it's Dick and Damian. Then you have like maybe 20 or 25 issues in the New 52 with the Peter Tomasi, the Grant Morrison stuff. And then Damian dies. And then Tom King didn't have anything to do with Damian for his like nearly 100 issue storyline. Scott Snyder didn't use Damian. James Tynion didn't use Damian. Damian was in the Rebirth Teen Titans. That storyline crashes and burns because he tortures Deathstroke without anyone knowing. Then he quits to do Lazarus Island, which is super recent stuff, trying to forge his own identity. Only now, in this latest Batman and Robin volume that started like last year, is he finally working with Bruce again. And the latest issues, he's like, I don't want to be Robin. I want to be a doctor like Thomas Wayne. So adding Damian in at the start, and then the possibility of interjecting him into all these stories that it's not for him, he was never written for, he doesn't factor into them at all. He completely changes the axis of the narrative. It's a big mistake. And the only, and again, you touched on, it's like maybe, like I said, there won't even be Damian in Brave and the Bold. I think the most likely scenario is we will see Dick as Robin first. I think even the fact that James Gunn says he'd like to make dynamic duo canon means he's 100% open to that. He's 100% open to the first Robin we see being Dick or Jason, right afterward.
Yeah.
I just think it's all so early. It's all so vague. And if Superman underperforms, which it could, I don't know. I mean, they're going to make, I think they could just go full steam ahead with like Batman Part 3, Penguin Season 2, and some of these other things just sort of fade away like they already have. Like, there was supposed to be, if you guys remember, there was going to be an Arkham show in the Reeves-verse that then when James Gunn took over, Reeves presumably, pitched it to him, and they said, okay, we'll make this DCU. That's canceled. So there's already a canceled DCU project relating to Batman. So they have no clue. They don't know what they're going to do. I don't trust James Gunn when he says it'll be Damian and it'll be based on the Grant Morrison books that I love. I don't believe that inherently at this point because, I mean, so few of those projects have come to fruition, and they're already, like, mutating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how old... Batman's already been around for, like, a significant period of time, right? Based on the Dr. Phosphorus timeline. So...
Yeah, it's 20 years. Interesting, because I feel like they have to be grappling with this, right? What we're having, they get paid for. It's just, how do you fix this issue without making it right? Like, I think Damian being here ruins so much. Now, Damian's my favorite Robin. He shouldn't be here. It just shouldn't. He just truncates too much time in too short of a period. Because how old is Batman? Is he 45? Like,
yeah,
I would love Batman at 18?
I would love for the general audience to go through like the same sort of arc that comic readers went through back in the day. I mean, I never experienced this organically because I sort of already knew about these characters, right? But you had Dick Grayson as Robin forever, and then he quits because of the whole Joker thing, and this new sniveling fucking brat, it becomes Robin. Everyone hates him so much that they vote to kill a kid in the comics. So that would just be cool to see in the movies, to have like Dick. Everyone falls in love with Dick as Robin. He quits. Everyone's probably. It would probably be a like, not to be a Disney adult, as Nick often accused me of, but if you've ever seen a Goofy movie, the perspective of the viewer changes wildly depending on your age. If you're younger, you identify with Max. If you're older, you identify with Goofy, his father. So the younger audience would be like, yeah, fuck you, Batman. And then the older audience would be like, Dick doesn't know what he's doing. Like, he's not ready. I'm just trying to, I have his best at heart. And then you could move into Jason, and everyone's like, fuck this kid, Dick was better, like he doesn't know what he's doing, no wonder he got himself fucking killed by the Joker. And then you finally get to Damian, and it's a completely different like response. But that would be a perfect world, but it's like, I feel like that's also asking way too much. It's impossible. You can't do it. I don't know.
I completely disagree, because if we've had solo Batman movies, if every single Batman movie is Batman and Robin, right? That's just the title, Batman Robin 1, 2, 3. We have, let's say you have the first one is the Dick movie, cool. You can then have the Titans movie where you finish Dick's arc there, so you don't need to deal with it in Batman, right? You can then do the Jason Todd and have him show up and have him do whatever you want him to do, right? And then
Batman and Robin trilogy. I mean, if you took like the MCU steps, it would be like Iron Man 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, but then
Avengers in between, Avengers 2, and then all the TV shows as well. Like you could have a Red Hood show, and then
right, like there's no. You could have each major Robin be their own movie, and then just have offshoot things where we explore. Well, either you'd have the Titans movie and a Jason show, or whatever you want to do. Where because there's a verse, you don't have to only do that, right? And then if you want Batman to do other things, well, he's gonna be. I assume he's gonna be on. Batman will be on the Justice League. I don't know why I said that. He'll be on the Justice League. I don't know.
And then you have villain. Right? You have villain movies, right? You have Clayface. Like you can easily have Batman have an arc in that, right? Like Batman, or like if there's a Two-Face movie or show, Batman would certainly be present. Bruce Wayne would be present.
Like, what if like you do Batman and Robin 2, Jason needs to be suited there, and then Clayface movie. That's where he dies, right? Now you're getting so much more for your money's worth. Right now we get a third generation. Now, depending on how close these movies, if he's getting a new Robin and they're leaving him each year, it would be a little bit.
But that would be so cool, because imagine you get then like we're 5 movies in, and this guy's like broken, like he's like
a rapid fire of like losing.
Yeah, and then you got like the one good guy, and then Damian shows up, and he's like, "This is my blood son," and then because that's another thing too is when you skip Dick becoming Robin, and then butting heads with Batman, becoming his own man, then making an identity of his own that's on par with Batman, and he's like, I did it. I helped this kid. It worked. And then he tries it with Jason, and it doesn't work. It ends horribly. It's a traumatic, horrible failure. And then, with Tim,
it fails even worse. It's like, it's crazy. I don't know how it happened, but
With Tim, he's like, I just want to be Robin. I don't want to be Batman one day. I just want to be, I like Robin more. This is my speed. And then you have Damian show up, and the audience has already seen through Bruce's perspective. He can turn out like Nightwing, or he can turn out like Red Hood. He doesn't want to be Robin forever. He wants to be Batman. This is the one kid. I think Jason wanted to as well. And I think Dick did, as up until a point when him and Bruce kind of diverged in their methods. But Damian would be like, I want to be Batman. I want to follow in your footsteps. As opposed to, again, it's the same problem with the Teen Titans. All this stuff's going to be backstory. Oh, Dick, he's he's the good one. I want you to be just like him. Don't hang around Damian. He smokes meth. Tim's a nerd. Don't be like him, Damian. Like, it'd be so much better if we just saw these stories. But Damian, I don't know how tenable it is. I don't know if what we're going to see is James going to be like, well, he's my favorite, so I want to use him now, and then everything else suffers. Like, it doesn't make sense. We're going to have Kid Flash Wally is going to be 3 years older than Damian? That's cursed. It's super cursed.
That's stupid.
It's terrible.
I am being a little bit greedy as well, because my favorite, like one of my favorite modern comic runs is Super Sons, and that's Damian and John. And man, would I love if they could have that. Because if you want to give Damian something, I think that is what you give it to him.
Yeah.
I think that Damian John stuff is really, really cool.
Imagine
one
you
problem.
do
We have no
World's
John.
Finest trilogy. Yeah, and again, it's like...
Maybe that's who Baby Joey is.
Baby Joey's Jonathan Samuel Kent?
Yeah.
That would be a twist. That would be wait, where's the green coming from?
He's a Martian that transforms into a human child, and he raises it as his own.
No. Lois Lane
Is
onto the Snyder Cut was Martian Manhunter.
The whole
and Superman
time.
and Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
Aha,
Yeah.
aha, I see where
Baby
you're
Joe.
going. Baby
Yeah.
Joey.
You guys be hanging out with M. Night Shyamalan? Yeah, it's just the
Yes.
worst fucking plot twist possible. Yeah,
And
I
I
don't
just
know.
don't
Listen,
know how are you. James Gunn wants to do like Batman. He wants to do the Superman Batman crossover. Does he want in his heart of hearts to have like all 50-year-old Batman? This is where it's like I start then my irrational fear shows up where I'm like, okay, he's already done this to some extent, right? Like assuming Boomerang's dead, that's a Flash villain gone that he killed in the Suicide Squad. Starro, typically the Justice League's first villain that unites them. Now that's the Suicide Squad. They unite to fight Starro. The whole Cersei debacle where she just got her ass kicked by a bunch of Z-listers, and is so divergent from her comic book self. And there's another instance too that I was thinking of, but it's like, oh, and Hal Jordan being so old. We're not going to get Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, Oliver Queen. We're not going to get that trifecta of them bouncing off of each other so well that we do from the comics. If we do, it's just going to be like, yo, Unc, what do you think of this crime scene? Like, it's not going to be the same spirit as it is in the book. So it's like, maybe James Gunn is 100% fine with 50-year-old Batman. I have two sons, Dick and Damian, and Superman is as old as Dick Grayson. And we just have to accept it for whatever reason. And then Wally is like 2 years older than Damien and 10 years younger than Dick. Like, and we're just gonna live with that.
I'm sitting here as well because I'm like, man, I'm trying to compare to the MCU. MCU is like 2009 to Endgame. It's like that is a long period of time, right? Let's say that's because I don't know how long is Phase 1 supposed to be. Gods and Monsters. We have no idea. There's not even been like they've not even said the word Justice League, right?
Mm-hmm.
So. What are we looking for time span?
Well, there's going to be
Because
stories
one
hundreds of
movie-
years in the past and movies decades in the past as well. So
Sure.
yeah.
That's like setup stuff, right? That's a little bit easier for me to kind of hand wave because it's like, we can set it in the past or set it in the cool. But the main continuity stuff from the chunk of movies, we're gonna get one movie this year, one movie next year. Now, if they are waiting to see how Superman does before they greenlight a lot more stuff, and maybe because James will be free because he's not directing Peacemaker or Superman, so maybe he's like much more free to help out in other projects because he seems to be very hands-on. Then maybe, but like, there's no shot we can do any of this with one movie a year, right? We were promised, what was it, 2 movies a year and 3 animated shows a year? Where are my animated shows? Oh wait,
They're all non-canon.
My bad. Blue Beetle, the animated series, is actually being announced to start early production early next year.
Let's go.
I forgot. I'm not gonna lie. When they said early next year, I was really hyped, and I forgot when May. So that's like.
And then it's probably going to be a year to do animation.
This year has
early...
gone by quick, man. We might as well be in June, like next week. Yeah. So.
If we're in June, it might as well be July.
Might as well. Superman's out tomorrow, basically.
If you're at Amazon Prime, it might as well be out tomorrow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We just need to be able to. I hope it's everything everyone's waiting for Superman, bated breath.
Yeah.
If the movie is good and does well, let's say that they then say, okay, you can greenlight more stuff. Supergirl's whenever. I really want another. I don't want Supergirl to be the only movie next year, but we have nothing else in production. Right? That's crazy that we're not going to get the first 3 years is going to be 3 movies on one show. Sorry, 2 shows. Creature Commando. Right?
Well, we've got when's Lanterns coming out? We have Lanterns, Peacemaker.
So yeah, released a timeline recently.
If you put it to be like one show and one movie a year, then.
Yeah, so he said that Creature Commando, Superman, Peacemaker, Lantern, Supergirl. So 1 movie this year, 2 shows this year, and then Lanterns is supposed to be released.
I assume start. Yeah.
In 2026. I don't think we have the exact dates, but next year. So
2 shows.
2 shows and Superman, and
Okay,
then
2 shows.
as far as we know, next year, Supergirl and Lanterns only.
Supergirl and Lanterns, with early production from Blue Beetle, which again I doubt that'll come out in the same year. So unless there's again, they have been they said they've been working on other projects behind the scenes, which I assume they actually have been. I don't think they're lying.
If it's a live action project and it starts filming today, I mean, really, Supergirl was filmed pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it was like 2 months or something, and they need a year for post-production, which is great, by the way. I am not complaining about that at all, because the movies are going to look way better than some other blockbusters that have been coming out in theaters. And
just say Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know why.
Thor: Love and Thunder, Ant-Man, Quantumania. I'll just start listing them off.
Yeah.
Fuck it. So that's good news, but the news we need is like, all right, this thing we're done, and this like we need to see.
Again,
we're gonna see like casting way before we're gonna see anything about like filming. So we're not even getting like that kind of stuff yet. So we need.
It was revealed in November 2023 that the Supergirl movie was being written.
Okay.
This iteration, because she was also tasked of writing a DCEU version of Supergirl. But the version of it that's coming out now, November 2023, and it's going to be 2026 before we see that. So 3-year period for these movies. Like, give or take, a few months. Like, that was late 2023. I assume we're going to get Supergirl in the summer.
Well, Sergeant Rock was supposed to start filming, but they missed their window. They're going to film that next year. So let's just skip that. It's going to come out in 2027.
Yeah. So then, again, that's going to be what? Is that Rock's a movie or a show?
Movie.
That's a movie.
Okay, movie. So my thing about that is there's zero shot. I'm going to say this. There's zero shot. The only movie you have for DC for 27 is Sergeant Rock.
Probably not.
Well, the Batman Part 2 will probably be 27.
Okay, that's fine then. If you want to do, I don't know. Is that fine? I'm a liar. I lied to you. My bad. I lied. It's not fine.
We're just in the mode of like we've got like cabin fever. You know what I mean? We're just inside and we're fucking pacing and we're scratching at the walls.
Dudes,
they make it worse. They make it worse.
With the worst possible rumor. Yeah, it makes it worse.
They're talking out of their ass, and then we rant and rave for an hour and a half about something that might not even be true. We have no fucking clue. So
it does not. I'll say this again. It does not make sense to me that the Supergirl writer would write Damian to be in the movie when James Gunn hasn't already written the Damian script.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that script doesn't exist. The only thing that they said, I think Safran said that the story is coming along nicely for Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
Which means nothing. That's like the most. That is because these guys know what they're saying. James Gunn knows the proper terms. Like when he says it's an awesome script, we're fiddling with it. He knows what fiddling with a script means. It's not some like he's not saying that liberally. He's using that in the strictest of terms. So the story's coming along nicely. That's probably the vaguest way to say this isn't a complete train wreck and we have no idea what we're doing. When it comes to Batman, which I don't think the Warner Brothers stockholders would appreciate them being so transparent about Batman of all things.
It also makes me wonder because announcements for casting, I assume, especially for like Batman, I think Wonder Woman, just the big characters you're going to cast, I assume you're going to want to give that its own space as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to cast it in the hype period for Superman. You probably don't want to do it in Peacemaker either. You maybe give that one a little bit of time of itself. So I'm just thinking, like, maybe sometime around September is when we can get some casting news on a new for whoever it is, right?
Some news. Unless they're right in now, Superman.
I think it's the success of Superman has a lot of these productions on pause. James Gunn, I don't think he knows how to do his job right now, which is directing, writing, and delegating. Script doctoring, things like that.
And overseeing all the post-production of Superman and Peacemaker simultaneously. It's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, he's shooting Peacemaker and overseeing the post-production of Superman and doing press tours for Superman. I don't think he knows how to do that, and I think when it comes to these directors and writers leaving or picking up other projects in the meantime, I think that comes from the fact that Warner Brothers isn't certain that this project is going to take off. It's all on Superman. It's all on Superman, and then also the Batman Part 2 is dragging the Brave and the Bold. So the plans for Batman is there's like it's got like a weighted vest on. It's not able to
severely delayed. Which could be a good thing at the end of the day. I mean, a lot of these ideas are ever changing from the original Gods and Monsters, which we discussed. So sorry, True, what?
No, that's fine. We're good.
I was going to say, let's get to this super chat today. Guillermo Torres, who is personally trying to fund your plane ticket to get over here because he's the only one that left a super chat today. Shout out to you, Guillermo. Unrelated question, are you going to review the Superman tie-in novel when it comes out? All of us are going to read it. We're going to have a dedicated episode to it. You will get a review from me, True, Nick, and Crisis. We'll all give it a rating out of 5 out of 10. We'll give it 5 super shields out of 10 super shields or whatever. I don't know what our rating system is going to be. But we'll read it, we'll rate it, and we'll get all the scans for it. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then you can sign up for our Metafy, which makes no sense to anyone out there, but we are cooking something up that's going to be pretty sweet. So I hope that answers your question, Guillermo, and we hit you with a little James Gunn tease, something that is always ever in flux as well that we're discussing behind the scenes. I would say it is coming along nicely, and we are fiddling with the idea of it. So be on the lookout for that. That is going to be it for us here in the DCU Experience today. Went a little long. It's a nice juicy one. You got a nice soliloquy from Crisis, who broke it down for you. He did not have the pins out. I believe that whiteboard is in another room, connecting all the dots with the Teen Titans. But let us leave you with this. We've got no idea, but we're really excited for it.
I know.
No, I'm at least optimistic that things will come together and they'll realize the error of their ways by not starting with Dick, or at least starting with Jason or something. But we are getting the Jason and Dick movies, so that's always good news, and hopefully that'll tie into the DCU. But it's been a lot of doom and gloom today, a lot of us complaining, but again, I think it's just a lot of cabin fever. We're really just waiting for Superman to come out so we have real tangible things to talk about and not goofballs on the internet giving us just red herrings and false rumors that we have to sit here and debunk for an hour and a half, thanks to Crisis. So that was the episode for today. For Crisis, True, myself, and Nick, this has been the DCU Experience. We will see you guys next week, no matter what. Be here, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.
Cool.